What an exciting day it was for the chess world today. We had Tata Steel Chess Tournament, one of the biggest tournaments in the chess circuit, starting, and we had likes of players like Gukesh, Anish, Arjun, Fabiano, and the list goes on. We have so many top players playing in. And one of the highlights was this game between the new world champion Gukesh and Anish Giri. How does the game begin? It starts off with knight f3, knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2, c5, castles, knight c6, and we reach this Catalan. Now, few moves that are possible here, like you can also play cd4 or you can play dc4. Anish goes for the main line, dc4, and Gukesh plays queen a4, which is one of the main lines. Another interesting option is to take on c5. Why is this so interesting? Because after bishop c5, knight d2, white gains a slight edge with knight b3, knight d4, and this bishop on g2 becoming superior to the bishop on c8. Generally, black is fine with perfect play, although white can always press for a tiny, teeny edge. And yeah, white does have a good score, usually. Queen a4 has been played, bishop d7, dc5, bishop c5, mainstream theory. And after bishop e7, white develops castles e4, rook c8, queen e2, bishop c5. And this is where Gukesh decides to have a think for 30 minutes, more than 30 minutes. You can see he has 1 hour 30 on his clock right now. Anish has 1 hour 41. So clearly Anish is in prep. The main way to continue in this position would be to play e5. The most logical way, according to me, would be to play e5. Knight d5, knight e4, bishop e7 to control d6. And what white can argue is that the d6 square would be weak if the bishop was not on the board. So white can try a move like bishop g5, exchange the dark square bishops, put a knight on d6 and be happy. This was of course very playable. And Gukesh goes into a deep calculation and decides to play bishop g5. It is not clear to me whether this is a bluff or was Gukesh actually just going into a deep dark forest. Because after h6, Gukesh decides not to take, but rather to play bishop h4. In one sense, he's asking black to play g5 and trap his bishop. Now, is this a trap or a bluff? I will let you be the judge after you watch the whole game. And g5 is played. Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes does happen. So what is Gukesh arguing here? Gukesh says, hey, I have two pieces, I have two pawns for a piece, and I'm wishing to run these pawns up and put you under a deadly pin. As Anish shows, things are not as easy as probably some of you might think. e5 by Anish. At first, it seems very counterintuitive. You're just allowing white to jump a knight with d5. But Gukesh goes for queen d2. The reason is if you play knight d5, it might seem very tempting to just go after this knight, but after bishop e7, it is not entirely clear how are you winning the knight. Maybe you can try takes, queen f3, but black just plays king g7 defending the knight. And it turns out there is not much there. So instead, Gukesh plays queen d2. One idea is to take on f6, and when the queen takes back, you take the bishop. The other idea is to play bishop h6 and queen g5, threatening checkmate. Bishop e7, bishop h6, king h7, takes, and f4 by Gukesh. So Gukesh is going for the full attack. Do note that white has a rook for two pieces. However, black has all the four pieces on the board. And these pieces can be really, really strong should white not be careful. For the moment, white is threatening to take on e5 and open up this f file with huge pressure. So Anish reacts. He plays bishop e6. Of course, trading queens in his favor because four minor pieces in an endgame are basically, yeah, Gukesh could resign if he just exchanged the queens. So Gukesh is mindful of that and he doesn't. I must show actually, rook d8, rook d8. You're not surviving with four minor pieces and you only having two, especially with that bishop going to eye or king for the rest of the game. Knight g4 jumping and you're dead. You're basically dead. So knight d5 is played, not allowing the trade of queens. And Gukesh argues that if you take, pawn takes, knight moves somewhere and then you take and you're very happy with that menacing central pawns. Anish says, you know what? I'm not taking, but I'm playing knight b4. I want to take back with the knight rather than the bishop. Gukesh says, fine, I'm gonna take. What else to do? Knight g4, threatening some sort of bishop c5, king h1, and potential knight f2s are in the air. Also, Anish might have the idea of bishop h6 targeting the queen this way, trying to seize the initiative from the young world champion. Rook d1, threatening knight f6. If you take back, then white just takes on d8 and he just wins the game. Up in material and black will have no attack. King h8, Anish just sidesteps the attack. King h1, white gets rid of any sort of tactics on this diagonal, or does he? Or does he? Or does he? We'll soon see. We'll soon see. King h1, rook c2. Anish is going for the attack. Anish has been playing this game flawlessly, basically, for the moment. And until he got into time trouble, he basically made no mistakes. Sort of like me, when I get into time trouble, I just blunder. And before that, I'm usually playing very well as well. So, rook c2, queen f4, knight d5, queen f3. And why does white not take here? If you take, Anish has a really powerful move here. Take a moment to spot it. Really powerful move, which actually puts Gukesh onto a severe back foot. The move is rook g2. If you take bishop d5, suddenly the bishops are becoming very active and you can't just checkmate with a queen. Your rook is not going to help checkmate the queen, checkmate the king. And three minor pieces against two rooks with this king open, it looks very bad for white. Looks terrible. I'll leave this for you to be analyzed. Just know that this position is fine for black. And I'll continue with the game, which happened with queen f3. The idea is that the knight is not moving there because queen is hanging. So queen b6. Actually, queen b6 was an error. Queen b6 was an error. Anish missed a good chance for him to maintain the advantage. In fact, he has to play an only move to maintain the advantage. And that is still rook takes g2. If you take, you threaten this fork with knight e3, and the complications after knight f1 are fine, are actually winning for black. And I'll let you analyze that one. So, queen b6 is played, e d5, rook f2. Anish goes for this very interesting idea that if you take, then knight f1, king g1. I mean, you don't need to see after anything after this, right? It's just winning for black. Just won a free rook for no reason. So, of course, Gukesh is not going to fall for that. He plays queen c3. Queen c3. Bishop b4. Queen c1. Bishop f5. Queen g5. So lots of tactics going on in the board. And I'm going to move on to the meaty bit, the juicy bit, which happens after bishop f8. Queen h4 check. Bishop h6. Rook e1. Queen takes b2, threatening to take on g2. The juicy bit happens when Gukesh blunders here with h3. Blunders or swindles, I'll let you be the judge. So what happens here is Gukesh could have gotten a draw with rook takes f2. The line goes something like knight takes f2, rook king g1, knight g4, rook f1, king g8. You play king g8 so that you can play bishop e3, rook takes f5, check, trying to win the rook. Rook goes back, and bishop e3 check. This is just a draw. Of course, both these guys are under 30 seconds, so of course they are not going to be precise in their calculations. However, they play. White plays h3, and Anish found this spectacular idea under time trouble, which is to play bishop e4. Wow, just beautiful. If you take on e4, then that's a blunder, since takes queen h2 is checkmate. So you can't do that. You can also not take on e4 because then rook takes bishop takes queen h2 is checkmate. Okay, so two captures are not possible, and you're giving your opponent a choice of moves when he has 30 seconds on the clock. But Gukesh, being Gukesh, finds a tricky idea. He takes on f2. In fact, probably the only move to play for something. Knight f2, and he plays king g1, and now he gives Anish options. Well, Anish has to decide. Firstly, the bishop is hanging. This bishop is hanging. And Anish is down to 40 seconds. He has to find something. Okay. Okay. And it turns out he only has one winning move, and that's not very easy to see. Not very easy to see. The way he wins this is by playing knight g4. What the hell? Why are you just putting your knight in front of a pawn? The first thing is you're threatening checkmate and you're defending the bishop. Should you take, of course, it's queen takes g2 checkmate. And if you take here, then it's queen f2, king h1, queen h2 checkmate. Okay, but this is the only way to win. Anish, under time trouble, doesn't see this, and he plays queen b6. And Gukesh says, wait, what? I just trade the queens. And the knight falls. So does the bishop. Oops. Bishop g2, king g2. Where is the knight going? Knight d3, check. And Gukesh just pushes the pawn. And you can't stop it. This rook e7 and black resigns. All came down to all that effort, basically engine-like play by Anish Giri, fell apart from one move. Just one move. And well, that's how brutal chess is. Well, that was my recap. Hope you liked it. Let me know if you would like me to recap all the games from the rounds. I don't know how good I am at this, so any feedback would be appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.